Okay, so anyone who spent like 5 minutes on lit Twitter knows that ChatGPT is kind of blowing up right now.
Yeah, it's definitely the hot new thing in like every academic field right now.
But like, is it actually useful for English lit? Or is it just like a fancy thesaurus?
Well, that's what we're going to be diving into today.
Exactly. And we're not just speculating here, folks. We've got an article by Professor Brian David Phillips, who's actually using ChatGPT with his English lit grad students.
Right, so we're talking real-world applications, not just some tech CEO's idea of the future of education.
Which, let's be honest, is a future I do not trust. But Professor Phillips makes a pretty compelling case for why ChatGPT could be a game changer.
Yeah, he does, and I think what makes his perspective so valuable
Yeah.
is that he really gets the concerns that people, especially academics, have about AI.
Oh, totally. Like, are we all going to be out of jobs in 5 years? Is this the end of critical thinking as we know it?
Exactly. And Professor Phillips doesn't shy away from those questions at all. But he also points out that ChatGPT is just a tool. Like any tool, it can be used for good or evil.
Okay, I like where this is going. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to use this thing, can we back up a sec? What is it about ChatGPT that makes it different from, say, Grammarly or even just like a really good search engine?
That's a great question. I think the key difference is that ChatGPT doesn't just process language. It seems to actually understand it.
Understand it how, though? Like, does it have opinions on Shakespeare?
Uh-huh. Not quite. But it can grasp things like tone, subtext, even irony, in a way that most AI tools just can't. And Professor Phillips argues that this ability to really get language is what makes it so potentially useful for literary analysis.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but also a little terrified. Because if a computer can understand irony, what does that say about us?
Yes, right. I think that's a question for the philosophers. But for us lit nerds, the more practical question is, how can we actually use this thing to, write better papers?
Yes, less existential dread, more practical tips. Because Professor Phillips is clear that he sees ChatGPT as writing assistance, not a replacement for our brains, right?
Exactly. He even compares over-reliance on AI to using a calculator to solve basic arithmetic. Sure, it's faster, but it doesn't actually teach you anything.
And at the end of the day, we're here to learn, right? Even if it means occasionally crying over Moby Dick at 3 a.m. So where do we even start with this thing? Like, I'm picturing opening up ChatGPT, typing in analyze Hamlet, and then just like waiting for the magic to
Well,
happen.
it's not quite that simple, though that would be amazing.
Sign me up for Lit Nerd 2.0, where we never have to read another Shakespearean tragedy again.
Yeah, right. Sadly, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But Professor Phillips does break down some really specific ways ChatGPT can be used for literary analysis. He divides them into three main categories: close reading, comparative analysis, and straight-up writing assistance.
Okay, those all sound useful. Let's dive in. And let's start with close reading, since that's probably what most people think of when they think English lit.
Totally. And this is where Professor Phillips gets really into the weeds on how ChatGPT can be like a superpowered close reading buddy.
Okay, I like the sound of that, because honestly, sometimes my brain just feels fried after like 2 pages of Moby Dick.
Oh, tell me about it. I think we've all been there. And what Professor Phillips argues is that ChatGPT can analyze a passage for all those key literary elements,
Mhm.
symbolism, foreshadowing, you name it.
Hmm.
But it can also do it through the lens of different literary theories.
Wait, really? So I could say, analyze this passage through a feminist lens.
Exactly. Or a Marxist lens, or a post-colonial lens, whatever theoretical framework you're working with.
Wow, that's next level. My grad school professors would be amazed. Or maybe terrified.
Right. It's like having a whole team of expert readers on call 24/7. And it's not just about spitting out definitions either. Professor Phillips gives this great example where he has ChatGPT analyze The Great Gatsby through both a Freudian and a Marxist lens. And the insights it pulled out were things even he hadn't considered before.
Okay, now that's impressive. I'm starting to see the potential here. It's not just about replacing our own analysis, but about pushing it further, right?
Absolutely. It's like ChatGPT can illuminate those hidden pathways in the text, and then we as humans, with our creativity and critical thinking skills, we get to explore those pathways even further.
I like it. It's like a collaborative treasure hunt. But okay, let's talk about something even scarier than Moby Dick. Comparative analysis. Because comparing two massive, complex novels is basically my worst nightmare.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. But Professor Phillips suggests using ChatGPT to compare things like themes, writing styles, even character archetypes across multiple works.
And it can actually do that, like accurately.
He gives this great example where he had his students use it to compare the works of Virginia Woolf and James Joyce, Talk about your notoriously difficult writers.
Oh my gosh, yeah. They're brilliant, but dense.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And Professor Phillips found that ChatGPT was able to draw these really insightful parallels between their use of stream of consciousness, things that would have taken his students hours to unearth on their own.
Okay, color me impressed. This is like having a research assistant who can read at warp speed.
Right. And think about it this way. The less time you spend slogging through those dense passages, the more time you have to actually analyze them, to make those insightful connections, to write that brilliant paper.
Okay, sold. I need to download this thing like yesterday. But now I'm curious about this whole writing assistance thing because let's be honest, sometimes even starting a paper feels impossible.
I hear you. And Professor Phillips gets that too. He actually devotes a whole section of the article to using ChatGPT for what he calls overcoming writing inertia.
Overcoming writing inertia, that sounds like exactly what I need in my life right now.
Right. So let's say you're staring at a blank page, completely stumped on how to even start your paper
Yeah.
about Shakespeare's use of dramatic irony.
Okay, so say I'm having one of those I'd rather eat my own footnotes kind of writing days. Where does ChatGPT even begin to help?
Well, in this scenario, Professor Phillips is basically like, don't worry, I gotcha. He suggests using what are called prompts to kind of jumpstart those creative juices.
Prompts. Okay, so like what I give ChatGPT a topic and say, "Go wild."
It's a little more structured than that, but yeah, basically. Let's stick with your Shakespeare example. You could try something like, write the opening paragraph of a paper exploring the use of dramatic irony in Othello.
And then ChatGPT just spits out a beautifully written paragraph that I can totally steal.
Uh-huh. Not quite beautifully written. Remember, it's still a machine learning model, so the writing can be a bit robotic sometimes.
Okay, so not plagiarism ready.
Definitely not. But the idea is that seeing those words on the page, even if they're not perfect, can help get you unstuck. It's like a spark, you know.
Okay, I can see that. Sometimes just having something, anything to work with is better than that terrifying blinking cursor.
Exactly. And once you have that starting point, you can tweak it, refine it, make it your own. Professor Phillips even talks about using ChatGPT to test out different arguments. Like, you could ask it to argue for and against a particular interpretation of a text.
Whoa. That's actually pretty cool. It's like having a personal debate partner on demand. But let's be real, sometimes the biggest problem isn't the big picture stuff, it's the nitty-gritty detail.
You mean like grammar and syntax?
Yeah, all those commas and semicolons that I swear I learned in high school but still somehow managed to mess up.
Oh, trust me, you are not alone there. And this is where Professor Phillips gets really excited about ChatGPT's potential. He sees it as a game changer for polishing our work, especially when it comes to those technical aspects of writing.
So it's like having a super-powered grammar checker.
It's even more than that. Think of it like a personal editor who's really good at catching those little errors that we all miss. You know those typos that make you want to crawl under your desk and die of shame when you reread your work? ChatGPT can help you avoid all of that.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. Because nothing kills my confidence in my own analysis like a misplaced apostrophe.
Exactly. And it's not just about avoiding typos. It's about learning to write more clearly, more concisely, more like a scholar, basically.
Yeah, because no one wants to read a paper that sounds like it was written by, well, a computer.
Exactly. And the cool thing is that Professor Phillips provides all these really specific prompts for this stage of the writing process, too. Like, he suggests asking ChatGPT to act as a journal reviewer or to identify any logical fallacies in this argument.
Oh, wow. So we're not just fixing grammar here, we're actually making our arguments stronger.
That's exactly it. And I think that's what makes this whole conversation so exciting. It's not just about making our lives as lit students a little easier. It's about using these tools to push the boundaries of what's possible in literary analysis.
It's like Professor Phillips says in the article, we're standing on the precipice of a new era in literary studies.
It's both exhilarating and, honestly, a little terrifying.
No kidding. But whether we're ready for it or not, AI is here to stay. And I think the key takeaway from this whole deep dive is that it's up to us to decide how we want to use it. 100%.
Are we going to let it turn us into lazy thinkers who just copy and paste whatever ChatGPT spits out? Or are we going to use it as a tool to enhance our own creativity, our own critical thinking skills, our own love for the written word?
Because at the end of the day, those are the qualities that make us human, right? And those are the qualities that will always set us apart no matter how advanced AI becomes.
On that note, I think we've given our listenens plenty to chew on for now.
I'd say so.
So until next time, happy reading, folks, and don't forget to keep those thinking caps on, even if those thinking caps occasionally need a little help from ChatGPT.
Breathe deep, close your eyes, and surrender to the cards. Let the rhythm of the symbols take you far. In the dance of the arcana, see your story start to bloom. Every flip, every turn, it's like magic in the room. Tarot trance, feel the vibe, let your spirit take a ride.